So I'm gonna turn it over to Aline.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Dale.
You're welcome.
I love the Halide projects, and I'm really thrilled to be here tonight to kick off the Living Image celebration on Saturday at 6, correct, is the opening that will be on Zoom, and I hope the artists can all attend and be able to share about their work. The good news is I spent 6 hours in the darkroom yesterday, and I feel very enlivened by getting my hands back in the chemicals. So that was wonderful. So I really thought there would be about 15 people here tonight. So I'm a little, I hope this is something that you will enjoy. But I think about photography all the time. As you know, I'm the editor of Lens Scratch, and we all think about photography and what the state of the landscape is in today's world. And I see, and I'm going to get into my PowerPoint, but I see so much the importance of the artist's hand, of silver gelatin, of sort of pushing back on the digital capture. And the Halide, I keep saying foundation, it's Halide projects are really a wonderful center to celebrate all of those ways of working. So I'm going to get started and share my screen. And it's so great to see so many familiar names. Feel free to comment or ask questions at any point in the chat, and then we can address them after. So taking a look at the contemporary photographic landscape, I've been showing these slides in my lectures for the last couple of years because I think they're so telling of what digital photography has done. And if you don't know Eric Kessels, he's an incredible Dutch curator that for this project at the Foam Museum, and then it traveled to, it has a permanent place at Pier 24 in San Francisco. It's 24 hours in photography, where he downloaded every photo uploaded to Flickr in one day. And you begin to see the the crush of imagery that we live with today. When you think about it, photography has become a language, and it is an international language. Everyone speaks it, and everyone has a camera. Even animals have GoPros, and everyone is photographing everything. But the good news is that you're making work during one of the most exciting times in the history of photography, where everything is possible. For me, it's so exciting because I didn't come up through college with a photo background. I came with an art background, where photography was just one element of my art making. And I see a return to that idea where photography is not as precious as it used to be. It's expansive. But there is plenty of room for just amazing portraits. And I saw Andrea's name in the audience, and I'm like, wow, I love her work so much. And I have to say that a lot of the work that I love the most is captured on film. Brian Scootmott's incredible projects, Sebastian Rogowski's. I mean, this is all, for me, I can always spot a film image. And then photographers who are really taking historical processes and moving them into incredible art forms. Last year's winner for the living image was Paula Riff. And I believe there were some pieces, was it 2 years ago, Dale, that she won? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago because we didn't do
Yeah,
living
so
image
her
last year.
work inspired last year's show. And then we have people who are now intervening with the surface of a photograph. And Adrienne Hughes has just continued to expand her practice of sewing on to photographs to add to the articulation of the work. Marina Fonts, also incredible work. And this is all done with yarn on photographs printed on canvas. And then photography is looking back and really taking vernacular and found photos and reconsidering them in new ways. Needlepoint, Diane Meyer has 2 fantastic projects using needlepoint that really speaks to the pixelization of a photograph. And then using photographs almost as wallpaper and installation, Gian Yu's fantastic works, taking it away from the frame, and Amy Bobin's woven photographs. I mean, this is really an incredible time in photography. So how do we go from this to this? This is Marguerite Smolder's incredible floral work that she does, creating a bath with mirrors and reflections to echo the old masters. In my humble opinion, our most meaningful work comes from the stew of our childhoods and the life experience and curiosities that we have. Most important, of equal importance, is the concept, the work, and the articulation. One can elevate the other, but when all are at a very high level, it's a home run. Transformation makes photographs fine art. I really had to think about what makes a fine art photograph and why we call it fine art. And I realized that the word art means that whoever is creating it is transforming it. And there's different ways to transform photographs. One is by articulation. Today, the idea of transformation is a critical part of being a fine art photographer. Transformation can simply be through deep consideration and articulation of a project, elevating what we think we know. So your writing is really shaping your work. And then to transform by process. The photographic artists are also transforming what is in front of the camera by intervening with the photograph to create new conceptual considerations of the medium, i.e. Matthew Brandt, whose incredible Lakes and Reservoirs project, where he allows the subject matter of his photographs, the lakes, to affect the outcome of the print. So he uses a large format camera to capture a landscape at water. He collects the water and then processes the print, which damages the emulsion and makes it imperfect. But it is actually the subject and the process are totally aligned. Another big genre right now is to tell your stories. As projects become books and books become exhibitions, the boundaries of storytelling begin to blur, and artists are telling stories in a myriad of ways that work both in print and on the wall. Some stories are personal explorations of family archives to understand familial histories. Some stories are created through historical research to retell stories. So some family history work. Cody Bratt's family has a legacy in the photographic world. He collected his old family photos and then intervened with a variety of processes: burning, scratching, drawing, tearing, and recreated the family album in a whole new way. Amani Willett's Disappearance of Joseph Plummer, one of my favorite books, is a fable. Amani's father bought some land in New Hampshire, and the land had a history of a hermit living on that land. And so he created his own story using redacted text and layered photographs and shooting through rice paper, all kinds of ways of intervening in this story with the artist's hand. This first was published as a book, and I wondered what it would look like as an exhibition, because the prints were very intimate and precious. But then I saw how it worked on the wall, and that was also a really interesting and unusual way to tell a story, where some things are framed, some things are not, some things are small, some things are large, and it really reflected the book in a beautiful way. Jessica Hines, this is an older project, but a beautiful telling of her brother's suicide, and using ephemera from his life and photos, and actually going to Vietnam and sort of revisiting his history to create this story. Sarah Massell's What Did the Deep Sea Say is a wonderful project about her, I believe it's her great aunt, who had an affair with a priest, and in Florida. And she, after her aunt died, she found this suitcase filled with all the artifacts of their affair. And so she created her own storytelling about this event in her family. Here she has inverted the image except for her aunt and the priest. And here they are in Florida. And then she shoots some of her own contemporary photographs to go with the vernacular storytelling of letters and old pictures, and uses herself as a muse in the work. Another big trend is historical storytelling. Matthew Arnold's well-celebrated series, Longing for Amelia, looked at the historical and mythological landscape of where Amelia Earhart's was last seen, and her plane crashed, and he actually went to the island. But he's using all sorts of ephemera to tell this story. And I think that this image in particular is really interesting because this is what he put out into the world. And it already felt like the spread of a book because of the text on the left. I love this telegram with the photo over the ocean. Raymond Thompson Jr. was the Lynch Scratch Student Prize winner 2 years ago, and he created an incredible series called Appalachian Ghosts. He went into the archives in Virginia where he was living and found a archive about this mine, which had very toxic dust, and all the miners were Black. And all the photos of the miners in the archives were blurred. So he went back and is retelling the story from a different perspective. Wendell White, this is his way of telling the stories of civil rights clashes on various areas, using the newspaper and then showing us where the scenes took place. And this is my favorite sort of trend in photography. I call it photography and this is a John Baldessari painting, but I think this is a perfect example of what's happening in photography, where it's photography and paint, photography and text. He really brought us to such an interesting point in art history. And I see so many echoes of work that was made in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is a Rauschenberg, but this feels very contemporary in today's photo world. David Hockney's Polaroids. And another thing that I've been looking at and trying to produce myself is what I call collisions. It's where you take new capture and you combine it with vernacular photos and you create something new. And this is a piece that I had in Chris Graves' book Solace, which was all about spreads, but it got me started in looking at my archives and looking at I have archives of found photos or things that I've collected and combining these images into something new. And I find this really exciting. Another person that's working in this vein is Rania Young. And I discovered Todd Gray a couple of years ago and just am blown away by his work, his framing, his presentations of layering ideas, but physically layering them through frames. Things are upside down, turned sideways, but all of these frames are physically somehow put together. I just find this work so incredibly exciting. And that's an install of one of his pieces. Also important is finding work that is personal, but then articulating it so it becomes universal. Work that is relevant to a national and international audience should go beyond the personal and speak to a moment in time. If your work is very personal, explain its connection to the universal, or if it's broad, explain your personal experience with the subject matter. Tanya Hollander started a project in 2011 called Are You Really My Friend? And she took a look at Facebook back in 2011, and she might have had 700 friends at that point. And she realized that she personally knew very few of her quote unquote friends. And so she set out to photograph every friend on Facebook. And she had to raise money. She did print sales. She did Kickstarters. She relied on the kindness of her quote unquote friends. And ultimately, she came out with a book. She has a wonderful TED Talk about this, this series. And it went on to be a big show at Mass MoCA. And And here's the exhibition. And this is really exciting to think about. This just came from a germ of an idea and then ended up at Mass MoCA as a TED Talk, as a book. But it was a really timely subject because Facebook was in the zeitgeist. Everyone was using it and thinking about it. We were thinking about who our friends are. So it was really timely, but an incredible amount of work to travel to the homes of 700 people and take their photos. As part of the exhibition, she had Post-it notes where people could post something about friendship. And here's her TED Talk. Her newest work is looking at people's special collections of ephemera. Tom Kiefer was a janitor at a Border Patrol center, and he noticed that every night the Border Patrol agents, after they arrested people trying to cross the border, would throw out all the artifacts that they owned and that they brought with them on their journey, which were incredibly humble. And so he would collect all of these things in trash bags and take them home. And he began to make these wonderful still lifes that speak of how difficult that journey was, the humble things that the people trying to get to the United States were carrying with them. And so this was personal because this was right in front of him. This was his work, but it's a universal story and an important and timely story. Let's skip that. Another thing to think about is conceptual freshness. There's nothing more exciting than finding work that feels fresh and shows the viewer something new about our world. Don't be afraid to submit work that feels different than most of what you see. So this body of work really was a wow factor for me. I don't think the photographs are particularly, masterful, but the concept is so wonderful that that it makes the series work. And I believe, I might be wrong, but I think this is an install shot at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington. So this center image is what we're going to look at next. And this is an art center where Naoko came to for an artist residency. And she was really interested in how Americans make friends, how they build community. And so she asked everyone in the residency if she could go home with them and meet another one of their groups. We all have different groups. We have our photo friends. We have our book club. We have people we walk with. So she began to photograph these other groups of people from this one group: dog walkers, dancers, bell ringers. And it took her into all these different worlds and made her consider what community is. Hookah smokers. This was a wonderful series that won one of the center prizes, and I thought this was a big wow. Justin works with convicts and or the incarcerated, and he wants to give them a sense of what they could be when they leave, or what they could have been if they weren't inside. And so the the person draws a picture of what they would like to be doing, and then they make it out of paper mache, and then he does a portrait of them as if they are not in prison, and then gets put into a larger collage that is made by the person. And there's just something really heartwarming and wonderful about this body of work. This person wanted to be a wizard. And then time-sensitive subject matter that's relevant now tends to be more competitive. If you've made work in the past and you wish to get it recognized, the best time is an event anniversary, or if there's some new information revealed to add to the understanding of the subject. So John Henry's incredible project, Stranger Fruit, all shot on film, I have to say, these are all 4x5, came at a very timely moment. I was happy enough to be on the jury for the Arnold Newman Prize, which is a $25,000 prize in portraiture, and we awarded John first prize. He began by looking at the Pieta and the pose of Jesus draped over Mary, and he began to think of young Black men senselessly killed and their mothers and what that would feel like. And so he traveled all over the United States, asking mothers to hold their son in a Pieta pose. And this work has been seen all over. And one thing I really love about John's way of thinking is that he wants it to be seen not just by the art world, but by the people that it would really, really impact. So he shows it in small centers, and he shows it on billboards and in museums. I mean, he really wants to get the work out. Here you see a billboard in New York. Christian K. Lee is another person making work in a really timely way. It's about Black gun owners in Texas. Christian is a soldier in Texas, and he created this series, which got a lot of attention, also 4x5. Another really powerful series. So why should I care? Show jurors and editors why they should care about the work by sharing a bit of your personal connection to the subject matter through your statement. Jurors are looking for an answer to the question why you are making these images at this time. So one series that just really tugged on my heartstrings was Deanna Dykman's series called Leaving and Waving. One major focus of her photographic legacy is that she has photographed her parents and family for over 35 years. And within those 35 years, she had really similar photographs. It was dad playing Scrabble in 1988, dad playing Scrabble in 1992, dad playing Scrabble in 1997. And there was something wonderful about seeing these same activities going on through the years. And one of the activities were that her parents would come as she pulled away to drive home, come out and wave goodbye to her. And so for 25 years, she made photographs of them waving goodbye. And she had a book that came out of this work. And as they aged, her dad passed away. And then it was just her mother waving goodbye. And the final bit of the book is just the house. And it's everybody's story. We all can relate to this work. And of course, this, I believe, was in the New Yorker and a ton of other places. Really, really wonderful series. And then there is the wow factor. That's when the process of making the work reflects the subject matter and the articulation is personal and powerful. Caleb Cole's incredible series, In Lieu of Flowers, about transgender people who have been murdered. And I am not 100% what process he used. I know he crushed rose petals to make this color. These might be lumen. Let me see if it states it here. Photosensitive material from plants and sun that cannot be fixed. So this work, if it gets into the sun, if he exhibits it, will disappear. And that is part of his conceptual thinking, that these people have already disappeared. So he is giving them another chance to be seen. Ella Morton's really dynamic, incredible project called Dissolving Landscapes, where she is using, oh gosh, I'm sorry, the name just flew out of my head.
Mordenkash.
Yeah, thank you, Mordenkash, to talk about the environment. And I think that this idea of process and subject is so fantastic. Deanne Whitman has a wonderful project called Melt, where she is also thinking about the environment, and she took photographs of glaciers and ice flows through Google Maps, and then printed them also in a way that once they hit the sunlight, they will disappear. So when she has an exhibition, it starts out with the images, and by the end of the exhibition, the frames are empty. The photos are. This is such a terrific conceptual way of working. Oh, and that was a video, which is not working. So I'm gonna keep going here. And now I'm shifting gears, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the juror's perspective. Art is subjective, and so is juring. Entering photographic competitions can be very rewarding. There's a feeling of validation in being part of the photo community, but remember that applying to competitions can become addictive and expensive. As someone who has entered and jured countless competitions, I want to state that it is a flawed and subjective process where the best work doesn't always win or even make it into the exhibition. But then again, sometimes it does. When applying, put your best images first. Grab jurors' attention right away and show the images with the most impact, emblematic of a project as a whole at the beginning of the submission. Jurors view hundreds of bodies of work during the review process, and just like writing an arresting leading paragraph of a book, you want to start strong. So there are many platforms how jurors see your work. And the one platform which I used for this, I forgot to take a screenshot of, which is called Cafe. But usually the juror is first presented with thumbnails. And you can click on the image and have it bigger. But most of the time, it's never as big and beautiful as how you look at your photographs on the screen. So one thing to think about is always assess how your work looks in thumbnails. How is your work reading small? Another thing that's important when you are submitting to things that require an artist statement, things like critical mass. When a juror has 200 bodies of work to get through and 200 artist statements to read, they need to assess what is going on pretty quickly. And many artists make the mistake of writing an artist statement that goes on for several paragraphs. And then in the last paragraph, it says, my work is about blah, blah, blah. So I always feel like you will have a better chance if you start it off in the first paragraph saying, my work, blue skies, is about, in the first paragraph. And right away, the juror can then begin to understand how the artist statement and the photographs fit together. I'm going to show you some really terrible juring platforms where I've even jurred on Flickr, which was terrible. Submit work that's appropriate to the theme, but then think outside the box because everyone will be thinking the same thing. I once jurred an exhibition with the theme rural. I looked at hundreds of images of barns, hundreds of images of rusty cars near barns, hundreds of images of running fences leading to barns, and finally hundreds of images of abandoned buildings that look like barns. Now, all those submissions were fine, but remember that during a competition, I am in fact curating an exhibition for gallery walls. I can only show one barn, one car, one running fence, and a structure with peeling paint. Otherwise, the show becomes redundant. So it's really important to interpret a theme beyond the obvious so that your work stands out. So this was a show that I jurred a number of years ago on noir. And I was given just a big fat folder of files and having to open and close each file and try to figure out what I'm moving forward. So in this case, I would create 3 folders, the folder that the files came in, a maybe folder, and a yes folder, and a no folder, so that I could begin to open, look at the image, and assess which folder it would go into. But you can see how there's the potential of something going into the wrong folder or getting missed. I also want to point out it is really important to commit to an image. So this was someone who submitted a number of images that you could tell they hadn't figured out what was the strongest one. So it was this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So you get an idea that just one of those, probably that one, might have gotten into the show, but the idea that this person wasn't committing to an image was not a good thing. Step away from Photoshop. I'm always shocked at how many images submitted are out of focus, not intentionally, or over sharpened or oversaturated. In the fine art world, these will get your work rejected quickly. Things like this, where you really feel like someone just took the cursor and moved it the wrong direction. So for the noir show, I really felt like this image was thinking outside the box. This is not a typical noir photograph, but the light and then the shadow that was ominous and the hand coming in, I thought was a beautiful interpretation of that kind of lighting. This was appropriate work, and this was my choice for that exhibition. Another show that I jurred was hundreds of images for Red. This is kind of generic, but literally people just sent anything with red in it. And of course, flowers, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flowers. And how do you pick? How do you pick this or this? And then people sent work that just had a touch of red. And then this was the piece that I picked as the winning image. So submission considerations. Probably the Halide Project doesn't want me to say this, but I always submit the least amount of photographs asked for. If they don't want 3 of your images, they probably aren't going to want 10. Try to submit cohesive images. It allows for the juror to possibly select more than 1 to hang side by side. Make sure your JPEGs are sized and labeled correctly. Doing this wrong will get you eliminated before the judging begins. Really make sure the work is appropriate to the call. If it isn't, it's a waste of money. And remember that the gallery is counting on you to submit your work that can be printed and framed quickly and expertly. I have heard from many gallerists that they receive work that looks good in a JPEG, but it's poorly executed and framed. That photographer will never be considered again by that gallery. And I had that experience. I juror a show, and the piece that I picked as the first prize came in, and literally there was a footstep on the mat, and the frame was beat up and horrible, and we couldn't have that as the first prize. And I had to call the artist and say, you know, you've really missed out because of what you sent us. I also suggest that you print your work before you submit to an exhibition. And I don't mean you're printing for the exhibition. I just mean make sure that it's a good print. Sometimes you have an image that is an impossible image to print, and you've submitted it to a show and it may get in, and you're really struggling with that. So make sure you know how that piece prints. And then final notes, keep track of your submissions, mark the due dates on your calendar. I just juror a show in LA, and there were a number of people, not a number, 2 or 3, who didn't answer the emails that they were in the show. They missed out on the opportunity. So really write things down. Don't forget to label your work on the back, so to make sure that it will be returned to you. Create a FedEx account for return shipments. Always thank the organization, and if possible, thank the juror. And that's it for juring. And I am now going to talk about, just briefly, about the Living Image exhibition. There was so much good work submitted to this show that really the hardest part for a juror is to call it down to a certain number. When you have hundreds of images, you usually, I think for this show, I could pick 30 images. I probably had over 100 that were truly wall-worthy and worthy of being in the exhibition. And those last cuts really come down to sort of personal preference. And people will say about a juror, oh, that person hates my work because they didn't accept it into the show. But what they don't know is that might have been number 31. And the juror is like really sad that that work is not in the show. I mean, there has never been an organization that I haven't tried to get them to show more work. I'm always like, can't you push it to 35? Because there's so much fantastic work out there. But I'm just going to end this with a few of the pieces that will be in the exhibition that will open on Saturday. Um, I wanted to share the first prize. I did not see any names on any file, so I did not know who this was. It turns out it's someone who lives in Los Angeles, and all her work that I know is woven photography. So this was really a surprise to me that this was her work. It's a silver gelatin print, but I just thought this was such a beautiful photograph. In the last couple of years, I've been drawn much more to where the artist has intervened into the photograph, but this, I couldn't turn away from this image. This is by Natalie Obermeyer. And then Dale, you're gonna have to help me because I still don't know whose work is what.
Oh, uh-oh, I might not know it off the top of my head.
If anyone knows this work, or is this
Yeah.
your piece?
There's several people who are in the show who are on the Zoom right now. Oh, and Frank's here too, so he probably has the images up on his computer. So if you don't know the names, we'll be able to get them up in the chat.
And I love this piece. I think I jurred a similar piece into the Soho Alternative Processes show. I don't know the artist, but I love that it's on wood. Oh, Frank said Jocelyn Chase.
Yeah, I think that was for the previous one.
Yeah.
Frank, do you have the name of this artist handy? If not, let me minimize my screen. Oh, Chris Manfield is here.
Chris Manfield. Okay, Chris, congratulations. I loved this portrait. And I just kept coming back to it. So beautiful. Frank, do you know who this person was?
Jules Victor, who I think may also be on the call.
Jules, are you here?
I thought I sent an email out to
All
Jules.
Right. I know this is Galina Curlat, and I know she's here. Beautiful lumen print. And I'm hoping Galina will talk about this on Saturday at the opening. And I don't know whose work this is, but I also loved it. I loved that it had scratches and it was a little bit dirty, and
I believe that's Leah McDonald. Yep,
oh,
here
wonderful,
she is.
Leah.
Yep.
Yeah. So these are just a few of, I mean, I loved everything in the show, but these are just a few that I wanted to share that are in the show. So that's all I've got for tonight. But I don't know if there's any questions or thoughts, or, you know, we are a community, happy to share your stories. You know, I guess.
Yeah. Well, people can put, if you have questions for Aline, you could put them in the chat, or there's the raise hand function. If you want to actually ask the question with your voice instead of your typing fingers, you can use the raise hand function, and then I'll allow you to activate your mic. And just for everyone who's in the Philly area, the show opens on Saturday. Like we mentioned, we're having the virtual opening on Saturday evening. It actually starts at 7 p.m. And the show will be viewable by appointment if you are in the Philly area. So if you just get in touch with us through the website, you can make an appointment to come and see all this work in person. And we're really hoping that things will sort of ease off as far as the pandemic, and that we'll be able to have an in-person closing reception at the end of the show, probably at the end of February. But stay tuned on our website. If you're not already on the mailing list, if you join the mailing list, we'll be sending out notifications about that, also on social media. So fingers crossed that we'll be able to have that in-person closing, but in the meantime, just get in touch with us if you're in the area and want to see it in person.
Patty Rose just asked whether one submits at the beginning of a call or just before midnight on the final day. Does it impact your submission? Waiting to the last minute impacts the organization, not the juror. What happens often is that an organization will put out a call, and by, let's say the call is over on a Friday, and by Thursday, they haven't really gotten that much response because everyone's waiting to the last minute. So then they might extend the call, which annoys everyone who got their work in the first week. But the organization is trying to raise some income. That's how a lot of organizations stay afloat. So, but the juror has no idea when you've submitted work. Anything else?
Yeah, there are a couple things. Chris is asking about the recording. We are hoping to get someone to help us with editing down all of our talks since we started back in 2020 and then archiving them. So at some point, this recording will be up with those. It might take a little while though, but again, stay in touch on the website or through our mailing list or on social media, and we'll keep people updated on when the recordings will be available. Scott is also asking, what do you see as the value of participating in juried competitions to photographers?
I think for a lot of photographers, it's how you begin to build your resume. At some point, you may want to step back from submitting to shows, but I also like supporting the organizations that I believe in. I like to be part of a community. So I've gotten a lot more picky about what I submit to, but for the most part, it's really a resume builder. And then at some point you realize, okay, I've been in that, I've had 10 shows in that gallery, it's time to move on. There were some other really good questions.
Let me jump in real quick and say too, like we have shows other than our annual, call for entry show. We do group shows, and we're starting to roll out some solo shows and more group shows. And so we can look to the artists who have submitted to previous call for entry shows as potential artists who we may offer solo shows or participation in a smaller group show in the future too. So sometimes when you're submitting to a show, there are more eyes on your work necessarily than the one juror.
I have to tell just a short story. I was at a portfolio review and I had entered work into a show, and the juror for the show was also a curator, and he came by my portfolio box and he said, "Oh, I so wanted to put your work in the show, but I just couldn't make it happen. We had too many images." And then he said, "But I'd like to offer you a solo show." So you just never know, what can happen when a juror sees your work, whether it gets in the show or not. I did want to respond to Mara's question about students who are starting to get into this process. A lot of calls for entry are very expensive for students, but I hope you know that all entries for Lens Scratch are free. It is a line on your resume. If you get into a Lens Scratch exhibition, about half of our exhibitions are juried, half we take everything. I just personally uploaded over 500 images and captioned them for the favorite photo on January 1st, and we accepted everything. But I have discovered on Instagram this really cool site called Art Open Calls, and I can pull it up if you want. And I have started submitting to some of those because I wanted to just kind of being with the cool kids, because a lot of it are student publications or very young publications. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. But it's a really cool way to find things to submit to. And most of them are free, if not maybe $5. So this is called Art Open Calls. I see Dale is already following this site. So we would be interested in the visual art tab right here, this green round dot. And if you click on it, it should take you to various calls for work. So this is one area that one way, and I see calls on Instagram quite often for things. The California Museum of Photography had a call, ICP had a call. So if you follow those organizations, various organizations, they may end up having calls. So that's just something to know about. And that's what I would do, especially as you're starting out. Maybe just submit to things online where you're not having to frame and ship and have the cost of something in a physical space.
That reminds me, I can't find the line in the chat right now, but someone had a question about how do you go about vetting, since there are so many, open calls and calls for entry, how do you go about vetting them to ensure that it's kind of worth your money to apply to one versus another?
If you are actually recording this, I have to be really careful with what I say, but there are organizations, and you should be able to ferret them out, that when you go on the site, there is an amateur category and a professional category, and each one has 30 different things you can submit to. Photos of men with 3 fingers for amateur and professional. I'm just joking, but I mean, it has every possible category that you can think of. Then everyone gets an honorable mention that enters the show, so that you think, you are the only one. So you have to just really assess, is this going to do my career any good to be in something that huge? There are really wonderful organizations. All the photo centers, I truly believe in. Every photo center director works so hard. I'm on the board of a couple photo centers, and I know from behind the scenes, it is not easy. And so I really vet all those calls for entry. There are a lot of galleries that really help a photographer at the beginning of their career, where they will print the work, they will put it in one of their frames. So just ask your friends. I mean, I really wanted to start at some point, sort of like a gold medal for an organization, but it's too tricky. You just can't. And there are things that I will never put my money towards. So that just comes from really researching and asking around. So I know that wasn't the best answer, but there definitely are things that you shouldn't waste your money on.
So just do your research.
Yes.
Marion has a question going back to when you mentioned about submitting becoming potentially addictive and expensive. They're asking, what do you suggest as a next step if you've gotten to, if you've applied to a plethora of calls and gotten into a good many of them, what would be another good way to get your work out there?
Create a book. I think this is true for so many sort of mid-career artists. Everyone has followed the rules. They apply to critical mass, they apply to various things, they get in, or they are a finalist, or and nothing really moves your career forward. So we really are living in a time where you have to do all the work. Um, Galleries are disappearing. Um, you have to create the buzz. Um, for instance, I was in this wonderful project over COVID called Visual Conversations. Nicolo Cerreto, I think I'm saying it wrong, created this website and invited photographers, paired us up with another photographer. And for a year, we exchanged images. And it was just a fun project, but that could really lead to a book project. Or I think you have to think creatively and make things happen because you've made those things happen. You could curate a show, you could do, the world is your oyster. We can't just wait for someone else to do it for us. So, um, that's my philosophy these days. And I think that, of course, everyone is doing a book, but really, COVID taught me how important it was to have some kind of tangible legacy to pass down to my children. And I want to just make a lot of small books that I print myself as zines or through edition one or something like that, and sell them on my website and not stress out about having to do something major. And I don't think it's a bad idea to just be quiet for a while. You don't always have to show up to every party. You can put your feet up and watch TV sometimes. So that's my thinking.
I see that Colleen has their hand raised, so I'm going to. Okay, Colleen, you should be able to talk now if you unmute yourself. Colleen, are you there? Uh-oh, maybe it was an accidental hand raise.
Chris asks, how did the Halide Project pick out Aline as the curator? Uh-oh. For this exhibition. Were there any other individuals considered?
Top secret. Well, how do we answer this? We've worked with Aline in the past, and obviously her reputation precedes her. And so we just reached out. It was that easy, right? I mean, like I mentioned, every year we have a different guest juror. So we're actually in the process, knock on wood, of revamping our website. So in the new version, there'll be like a drop-down menu with past shows and information about them. So you'll be able to look and see what other guest jurors we've had in the past. And I just kind of keep a mental list or a physical list of people who we might be interested in working with and inviting in to jury Living Image. And like I mentioned, we've worked with Aline in the past, and she's just always been such a pleasure to work with. So we like to choose people who are a good fit for our organization. And just, again, our experience with her, we knew it would be a very positive one.
Well, thank you. I mean, for me, I was thrilled because this is really what I'm interested in my own practice. I still only shoot film, and I came to the right party for this. And I wanted to say that Jenny Kula has shared that a group of her students created a female collective and are working together to package and promote group shows, which is fantastic. I mean, creating a collective of like-minded photographers is such a great idea. And there's power in numbers. So something to think about. A lot of the photo festivals will have a call for an exhibition. Filter has calls for exhibitions. And you could curate, you could have a collective and create something. I'm actually doing that in Los Angeles. 12 female artists have put together an exhibition called Memory is a Verb. And we are looking for places to place that show, and giving artist talks. And so we're trying to make something happen in a world where it's really hard to make something happen. So
Yeah, I think that's a good like power in numbers. Like you mentioned, a lot of the festivals and even just individual galleries have kind of open calls for curators and for shows. And so, right, if you pool your community together and pitch a show to a gallery or a festival, that's great. But I myself and a few other female film and alt pro practitioners actually started a similar group over the pandemic too, and we're about to have a show this summer. We did the same thing. We kind of, pooled ourselves as a collective and pitched this show idea. So yeah, if you have people who you have a similar focus or theme with your work, or somehow you form a collective, that's a really great way to get your work out there. And it can help defray costs and stuff like that too, if you're splitting the costs of producing a show.
there's so much you could do. Let's say you have an empty notebook and you paste in a photo and then you ship it to someone else and they paste in a photo. And then you end up with a book with some original small prints in it. And then you pitch it to a library. A lot of really significant libraries are very interested in artist books, handmade artist books. So just think about some conceptual idea that is fun to do, that isn't like an onerous task. So that's just think creatively. That's my advice.
Let's see if we're Silver Water Collective, Brianna. Oh wait, I guess. Oh, so you're all Jenny, Brianna, and Kat are all part of Silver Water Collective, which I'd read about recently. So that's wonderful.
Frank says we worked with 2 photographers who've been mailing photosensitive materials back and forth to each other for
Right.
years, exposing it as it gets shipped. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
really interesting.
they were in a show 2 years ago. Well, now maybe 3 years ago, I believe, right, Frank? Yeah, and that's kind of like an ongoing. It was pre-pandemic. That's what they've been working on for years, doing this shipping, and they kind of distress the envelope, so there's some light leaking going on and all of that. So the results are really interesting.
So Jenny is getting a lot of love in the chat. She must be an amazing teacher.
Ah, okay. And you guys are all at SCAD, right? Is that what I'm reading? Woo, SCAD's in the house. I saw that there were a lot of SCAD emails when I was emailing out the invites. Whoa. I've heard wonderful things about SCAD. I knew someone who taught in the painting department. All right. All right, do we have any other questions that I missed? Ooh. Oh, well, thank you, Chris, for those kind words. Let's all make sure that Halide gets the attention that it deserves. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, we will be, so tonight was the first talk. We took a little break over the holiday season, and this is our first talk of 2022. And so we're slowly getting them onto the website. So if you go to the same page where you registered for this talk, we should be getting all of the talks through March up on there within the next few days or the next week or so. So go ahead and keep checking that, and hopefully we will see a lot of you at future talks. Like I mentioned and Aline mentioned, the opening reception, the virtual opening reception for Living Image will be Saturday evening, 7 p.m. So you'll be able to see all of the works that are in the show, and all of the artists will like briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll have a Q&A. So if people have questions pertaining to process or any of the artists, you know, we'll have the Q&A at the end of that too. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys there. You can meet the artists. And what else? Am I forgetting anything? If you're in the Philly area, just drop us a line to come see the show while it's up, and hopefully we'll be able to do the in-person closing. And also, if you're in the area, keep an eye out for posts about the darkroom opening. Is that it? Frank, are you still there? Am I forgetting anything? No, we're good. All right, awesome. All right, thank you. Yeah, we're very excited about the darkroom. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Aline, for doing the talk. And we hope to see everybody out there in the world in person at some point, hopefully.
Thanks for coming. Be safe.
All right, good night, everybody.